Welcome to the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. Today is Friday, July the 5th, 2019. I am MD. I hope you had a wonderful celebration of the 4th of July, a day which usually used to remember that there was a time in the history of this country a group of pioneers fought to provide us with the ultimate freedom, with independence. But as you might have read in one of my publications, that 4th of July was more a time for reflection than celebration. Today, as we continue with the reading of the Mueller report, a reminder that something terrible had happened to the United States of America, we will provide some context, and we will also take a look at another important aspect of a topic that should be of interest to us all, that consumer rights. We will approach that issue first, and we will continue as usual with the reading of the Mueller report. You are, after all, on the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. Give us 60 seconds, we will give you the world. Hello once again, I am MD. If you've been here for the first time, thank you for your participation. Thank you for your contribution. It makes the journey a tad lighter, a tad better. If you're here for the first time, welcome to the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. The fourth branch program is not associated with any political party. And we at the fourth branch do not have any political aspiration. The ultimate objective is to perfect the union, and in order to do so, we recognize we have to remove the biggest obstacle of all, ignorance. JFK said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. And the question that usually comes is, how do you recognize ignorance? Well, the good news depends on the perspective. We were all born ignorant. Yes, you heard correctly. No one was born a genius. We were all born ignorant. Now, the idea of a genius is an individual who has this tremendous ability to grasp concept complex pretty quickly. That's why we call the individual a genius. Sometimes the individual can quickly take a look at something and learn it just like that. The rest of us, it may take us a while, it may take a little bit of learning, but the individual can simply look at it and we call that individual a genius. But even that genius had to learn to say mom, dad, had to learn to read, and so on and so forth. We were all born ignorant. But many chosen to stay and live in ignorance. What complicates the situation is the fact that there is a small group of people who strive in life financially, socially, on the back of ignorance. As such, they like the idea of people staying in ignorance. It may sound weird to you, of course it does, but it is true. For instance, let's take Fox, which we usually pick on. It's called itself Fox News, when in fact it has always been a propaganda machine, but that's not even the worst of it, but it has lied since its inception, completely lied to its audience. In this program, you most likely heard many times that I mentioned that Republicans are gullible, naive, and a number of my fellow Republicans always take offense, push back, and I have plenty of examples. I provided plenty of examples in the existence of this program that indeed it is true. You take your Republican representative. All they do in general is lying to the constituent, and yet the constituent continue to believe them, whatever they say. In the fight between who grabs power, who holds power, who does what to this country, there has been a big fight since the beginning of the Republic. And the fight has nothing to do with what we, the constituent, we, the people want, but rather what the politicians decide that they wish to give to us. So, because in general, and that is a fact, and we mentioned before, and we'll mention it again, there are 100 years, a century of data that prove beyond reasonable doubt that Republican legislators have always given lip service, all the while working against the constituent. And that's not, as my fellow Republican like to put it, a damn liberal talking. Today we will give you another tangible proof of such. Yes, Republicans always claim certain things, Republican legislators, but in reality, every action, every policy that they propose and implement don't have to look far. You don't have to be a genius. It always works against the constituent, not just Republican constituent, against the constituent, against the United States of America. And that's what always baffles me, because how do how does a smart person continue to support individuals who work against his or her interests? That baffles me. Now, I'll give credit to the Republican representative. They are very smart at messaging. They are very good at marketing. No matter what they market, they're very good at doing it. Republican representatives are very good at, can even sell you the moon, although they have no idea where the moon is, but they will sell it to you. Well, fortunately for the country, Democrats do not buy, in general, do not buy just what is being sold to them. That's why you see the Democrat Party feels like it's very divided. And the reason is very simple, is because Democrats, they do not have an opinion. They do not fall in line. They argue their various positions, and because of that, it feels like it is divided. Actually, it is good for any system of democracy for people to have divergent type of opinion. In Republican Party, whatever is said at the top, everybody adopts it. I already given you the example. During the Bush administration, Bush could not pronounce nuclear, so he said nuclear. And from that time that he opened his mouth and said that, all the Republicans in his administration, in the legislative branch, was saying exactly the same thing. But we all know he was trying to say nuclear and could not. He has a speech impediment. Everybody knows that. Just to give you an example, that Republicans, they united, however bad or false, what they united behind. And everybody falls in line. It's not so for Democrats. In fact, I've argued with my fellow Republicans that the big difference between Republicans and Democrats are not necessarily policies, the way that people think. The constituent believe that Republicans are different from Democrats. Republican representatives, that is, legislators, they think they're different. I argue to the contrary. What's different between those two sides is the messaging. For instance, I'll give you a tangible example. During the Clinton administration, Clinton, seeing the state of the country, the state of affairs, the state of the debt, and say, we're going to raise taxes in order to address the debt issue in the country. And this is where sometimes you have to scratch your head exactly, what do Republican constituents really want? Because if you've been following administration, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, and so on, you have to ask the question, what do Republican constituents really want? Bill Clinton came and said, we're going to solve the debt problem in the country. Republicans always claim that they have a debt problem. They don't want debt on our children, right? That's the argument. In fact, that's what Republicans legislators have always campaigned on, and that's how they manage to lure their constituents to vote for them, because they say we are fiscally conservative. Now, Bill Clinton came and said, we have to solve the debt problem. Well, Republicans always claim that we cannot continue to burden our children with debt. Now, he is someone that came and said, we're going to do exactly what you've been asking for. But in order to do so, we have to raise taxes, because the money has to come somewhere. Oh, sure, we print money, but we cannot print money to get ourselves out of debt. So Bill Clinton raised taxes, and sure enough, by the time Bill Clinton left the Oval Office, the United States of America was enjoying a surplus. So everybody, Republican in particular, should have been dancing on the street, right? Of course not. Wait a minute, but isn't the idea of putting an end to our national debt really the issue that Republicans always have? Why weren't they dancing? I'll leave you to answer that question yourself. Now, George W. Bush took over in just 1 year, wipe out all the surplus. So much for fiscally conservative. In 1 year, the surplus that Bill Clinton left for the country was completely wiped out, and we started to get back into the negative again. So if you think about it, what exactly do Republican constituents want? You have an administration, of course it wasn't Republican, it was Democrat, that balances the budget and left the country with a surplus. Well, this is what we want. Why would we not maintain that? No, Republican came, wipe out and say, we need to get a tax cut. This is our money. That has to baffle the mind as to what really the Republican constituents want, because they seem to think that they can get both tax cut and balanced budget at the same time. And you must know, in your own personal life, in order to get something done, you don't have unlimited amount of money. You have to make sacrifice somewhere in order to get what you want most to happen. That's just the way it is. But you have to make up your mind as to what you want. As I mentioned, Republican legislator representative, they're good at messaging. So the best way for them to continue to keep their job is by pinning Democrat against Republican. And this way, the constituents are always fighting and thinking they're fighting for something good, but what they're fighting for is really for their Republican representative to stay in Washington, despite the fact they're not doing anything worthwhile, they're not doing anything that is beneficial for them. And that's been the state of affairs for 100 years in Washington. One thing that the major difference between Democrat representatives, that is, I'm not talking about constituent, we the people are in a different part of the conversation. Republican representative and Democrat representative, the big difference between those two is this: Democrats tell you exactly what they're doing. Republicans lie to you. That's as simple as that. Democrats say, we're going to raise taxes to solve the debt problem. Republicans say, we can give you tax cut because it's your money and you should have it back. Now they lied twice in making that statement. One, they don't really give you a tax cut because the little money that you receive is not really a tax cut. I explained it before, I'll say it once more so that you get a sense that the difference, the big difference between Democrat legislators and Republican legislators is night and day. Democrats say exactly what they want. You may not agree with it. We're not talking about agreeing. We're not talking about being better or being really the ultimate solution. No, that's a different conversation. But they tell you exactly what they're doing. Republican legislators lie to you about what they're doing. And this is not a speculation. February 2017, Republican legislators come to you and say, we're going to give you a tax cut. Right? Just to give you the latest example so that you don't think it's something that I'm making up. We're going to give you a tax cut. They lied to you actually 3 times. First, there was no money to give you a tax cut. There was absolutely no money. It had to be borrowed. Now, wait a minute. If you borrow money, should you not return it? How could it be in the case of George W. Bush, when he took over, a surplus that if he didn't continue to mismanage the financial aspect of the country, then he could have spent the surplus and stayed there. Then the country would have been okay, not a deficit, not a surplus. Okay, that would be really that. But since it continued going down that path, then we get back into more debt. But in the case of Donald Trump, in the case during Donald Trump administration, there was no surplus. You can only give something you have. Otherwise, you have to borrow. If you're going to buy a house, that's why most people who purchase a home only give so much towards the purchase of the home. The rest of the money has to be financed. So you cannot really give what you don't have. So when Republicans came in 2017 and say, we're going to give you a tax cut. Now, any average intelligent individual should have said, where would the money come from? Oh, we're going to borrow that money. Well, then that's not a tax cut. I mean, those are very simple, basic things for the average intelligent individual to understand. You don't have to have a bachelor or a master's degree. You don't have to have a degree in business to understand that. If you don't have the money, then where is the money coming from? So the Republicans didn't tell you that, but they say, we're going to give you a tax cut. Okay, that's lie number one. So they borrow the money, so which means the money has to be returned at some point. Now, you may not live long enough to return that money, but someone has to return that money, your children, your grandchildren. That's really simple math. You don't need a college degree for that. Now, out of the $1.5 trillion that they borrowed, they use 10% to give to people. We, the people, only receive 10% of that. Okay, what happened to the other 90%? Now, follow that very closely, because it looks like there is this misconception in the Republican circle that Republicans Republican legislature pass legislation, implement policies that beneficial to them. I want to show you those are not words that I'm saying without justification. Those are what I'm talking about, the $1.5 trillion tax cut. It's a legislation that was passed in February 2017, signed by Donald Trump. It just happened. Just to give you an example, when Republicans constituent comparing with Democrat, my fellow Republican always say, I would never vote Democrat because Democrats are big spenders. Republicans are fiscally conservative. Now, Republicans say they are fiscally conservative. There is a big difference between saying and being, because Republicans have always claimed that they are fiscally conservative. Well, in words they are, but every time that they have the opportunity, they show that they are no better or even worse in most cases than Democrats in terms of spending. So saying you are fiscally conservative doesn't make you fiscally conservative. But for 100 years, Republicans have been saying that, and yet their action prove very different from what they claim. So in 2017, Republican came to the Republican constituent, Republican representative went to the Republican constituent and say, we're going to give you a tax cut. They borrow $1.5 trillion. So they take 10% out of that money and they distribute to all the people. That's why you notice on your paycheck you may have received a 40, a 60, or even an $80 increase on your paycheck. And most of my fellow Republicans that I talk to go, yeah, I don't care whether the rich get more, at least I get something. Because $80, I mean, if you at where you at, you call those who politicians like to call middle class, who are really working class, because maybe the definition of middle class is merged with working class, but those are an individual who is rejoicing of an extra $80 in a paycheck is not a middle class individual. That individual is a working class individual. $80 would not get anyone in the middle class sector to rejoice, to be excited. So I know those fellow Republicans that have rejoiced and say, at least I get something. I know they're part of the working class, not the middle class. Now they may call themselves middle class, but they're no middle class. They're in the working class because they receive $80 extra and they say, I don't care, Donald Trump gave me $80 extra. Yay! Great president! First, you didn't get $80, you borrow $80. You will have to get that, to give that back. As I mentioned, the $1.5 trillion, 10% of which are used to send to the people were borrowed, which means someone has to return that money. If it's not you, it's going to be your children, it's going to be your grandchildren. So much for the yay, great president. Not only you have to return the $80, but you have to pay interest in it. Yeah! But that's not even the worst that your Republican legislature have done. The 90% that they use to give to large corporation and wealthy individual, well, hold your chair, because you, the taxpayer, we the people, are responsible for the 90%. Remember, they borrow 1.5 trillion. They take 10% out of that to distribute among the people, and 90% they give it to large corporation and wealthy individual. But we only got 10%. At least you could have said, okay, borrowed money, I don't care, I get $80, I needed those $80 at a time that it was necessary for me to get it, I'm fine, I'll pay for it, or my children will pay for it, whatever. But how about the 90% that you didn't get a penny out of? Only large corporation and wealthy individual get it. Why would you have to pay that back? Why would they not? Why would those corporations, those wealthy individuals, why would they not be on the hook to pay that back? Well, it's because your Republican legislators again lied to you. So they craft the legislation in such a way that says those corporations do not have to pay a single penny because they already made sure that the constituents are responsible for that. So when I say to you that your Republican representative, they take you for a sucker, you think that's a joke. They're fiscally conservative in words, but in reality, those people rely exclusively on the gullibility and naiveness of the constituent in order to continue to keep their job, because whatever that they do is always detrimental to the constituent. Of course, they sell it to you differently because they say, if we give a tax cut to the large corporation, they'll create more job and you have job, so you don't have to worry about paying debt. That's their argument. As I mentioned earlier, they're very good at messaging. They're very good at deception. Because if someone were to tell you, I'm going to borrow $100,000, I'm going to give you $10,000, but you're responsible for the whole $100,000, would you take that? Would you? I don't know of any individual, whether you went to college or not, Even the dumbest person would not have gone for that deal. But that's exactly what Republicans did with the tax cut. They took $1.5 trillion, they take 10% of that, distribute it among the people, and the 90% they gave it to large corporations, and they stick the taxpayers, us, the bill for the whole 1.5 trillion. You heard correctly, that's what the legislation says, that the large corporation that's getting the money don't have to pay a single penny back. But when Republican constituents are talking, they say, I would never vote Democrat because, they're big spenders. Well, your Republican representative simply have a way of telling you they're not big spenders when in general, that's all they do. We have data. I just gave you this example that's only 2 years old, but we have 100 years of data. That's what your Republican legislature have been doing. They tell you that they for something, but they for something completely different. And the reason they did that, in case you don't know, is because when they give money to large corporations, they expecting when they go for election and re-election campaign, they get financed by those organizations. That's the whole thing. So they stick to taxpayers with a bill because they figure out you, the taxpayer, you're going to give so much money. So they don't care much for you. The large corporations are going to give hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's the kind of organization they want to support. So the big difference between Democrat and Republican is Democrat tell you what they're doing, Republican lie to you about what they're doing. That's a big difference. You don't have to be a genius to figure that out. We have 100 years of data that show exactly that. And when we return, we're going to show you something else that's actually following you, that's going to follow you for a very long time unless a Democrat gets back in the Oval Office and reverse it. Because every time there is a Republican administration, you can rest assured that what they say they're doing for the people is lip service, because they say one thing and they do something completely different. But for some reason that I have yet to understand, the Republican constituents love to hear the kind of thing that Republican representatives say, but they don't care that they're not doing what they say that they promised to do. They're fiscally conservative. Well, the expression saying that is someone that's going to really take care of the money in the country, that's going to make sure that money is not wasted. That's what a fiscally conservative individual would do. But that's not what your Republican representatives do. They tell you they are fiscally conservative. They tell you they for. So which one is best? Someone who lied to you or someone who tells you exactly what he's doing? Which one would you take? So I understand all this idea about we want a party that's fiscally conservative. But look in the mirror and see if that's the case. But you want someone to lie to you. Now, if you say that, now I understand. I cannot say it's okay, but I understand why you prefer to go with individuals who lie to you. But don't tell me you prefer the Republican Party because it's fiscally conservative. Don't tell me you prefer the Republican Party because it's Christian conservative. Because we know those are labels that they do not live by. A few months ago, I wrote several part article in which I say debunking the Republican Party. Everything that they say they stand for, it's in words only, but in action, they do worse than the Democrat counterpart they always blaming. So yes, you could say I would never be a Democrat because Democrats are not fiscally conservative. Well, Democrats do not say they're fiscally conservative. Republicans say that, but Republicans lie about being fiscally conservative. Now, you as a constituent, you may be fiscally conservative, but you're representing the individual who are responsible to pass legislation. They're not fiscally conservative. As such, your views do not matter. As I mentioned, I'm going to show you once again how it was so easy for the Republican representative that we have to work against the constituent, in a sense, against the United States of America. Live from New York City, at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the Fourth Branch presents discussions, debates, commentary on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on controversial issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, will make you smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Welcome to Common Sense. If you're here for the first time, once again, welcome to the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. If you've been here before, thank you for your participation. Make the journey a little bit lighter, more bearable. The Fourth Branch program is not associated with any political party. Our ultimate objective is to perfect the union. We're talking about how the Republican representatives have been literally for centuries lying to their constituent. They say they for something, but their legislation show they are completely in a completely different world from their constituent. Now, I just showed to you in 2017, your Republican representative came to you and say, we're going to give you a tax cut. Instead, they borrowed money. They give 10% to the working people, and the 90% they distributed among large corporations and wealthy individuals. For instance, in 2018, now those people who get 40, 60, 80 on their paycheck and they were dancing as if it's the best thing that has happened to them. In 2018, Blue Cross Blue Shield received $230 million back. Blue Cross Blue Shield alone. That's out of the $1.5 trillion that were borrowed. Company were getting huge sum of money. You getting 60, 80 bucks and you dancing. And guess what? Both your 60, 80 bucks and the $230 million by Blue Cross Blue Shield are your responsibility to pay back. Yes, you heard correctly, because that's the way Republican crafted the legislation. Now, here's another aspect. Now, you may not remember, but because every time that there is a Democrat in the Oval Office, everything that's done is bad. I remember during the Obama administration, there was never a single thing, and I kid you not, you watch Fox for 8 years of Obama administration, there was not a single thing that Obama did that was right, that was good, because everything that Obama did had to be wrong, had to be bad. Now picture you as an audience of a network that does not tell you exactly what your government is doing, but rather feeding you lies, falsehoods about the government. How do you think you would react towards that government? A place that calls itself knows. Under the Obama administration, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created. Now, I don't have to tell you or try to define for you what a Consumer Protection Bureau is. It's pretty self-explanatory. But just to give you a sense, it's a bureau whose job, at least that's what they say, that's the reason it was created, whose job is to make certain the financial companies treat the constituent, treat the American people fairly. That's what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was created for by the Obama administration. It is defined as such. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, is an agency of the United States government responsible for consumer protection in the financial sector. What that means is it regulates banks, credit unions, security firms, payday lenders, mortgage servicing operation, foreclosure, release services, debt collectors, and any institution, anything that has to do with financial. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau it's in the domain of CFPB. Now, why was it created? You cannot possibly already forget that at the end of the George W. Bush administration, there was a financial meltdown in the country. Wall Street was in disarray. There was a great recession in the country. Mortgages, banks, bankruptcy, the auto industry. It was a bloodbath for the financial sector. You cannot not remember that. I know it's been long, 2007, 2008. It's been a long time. People lost their retirement account. Some of them completely wiped out. If you recall nothing of this sort, remember Madoff? Well, who would not remember Madoff? Bernie Madoff, that is. The financial whiz who wiped everyone's account, whether it's retirement fund, bank account, wiped that clean through a scheme that he came up with. And wipe your saving completely. Now, when Obama took over, January of 2009, he quickly took a look at what can be done, what could be done in order to protect the consumers in case something similar to that debacle, to that Wall Street meltdown, to the financial greed of all those institutions, what can be done to protect the consumer? Well, something good did happen. The Dodd-Frank Reform and Consumer Protection Act was passed. It is baffling to me personally, because every time I have a conversation with one of my fellow Republicans, it is always difficult for me to understand if they understand that the role of the government is to protect us, the citizen, not just in terms of national danger, but in every aspect, whether it's our finance, it's our health, no matter which domain you look at, the main objective of a government, whether it's federal or state, is to protect us, the consumers, the constituent, not businesses, not organization. Us, the citizen of the country. That's the job. I don't think there can be any disagreement there. Where we're having disagreement is the fact that Republican representatives have become so good at deception that they manage to convince their constituent that the other guy, the Democrats, are bad. As such, you should always fight against Democrat. And you know, ironically, Democrats do not have the same message. And the reason I suspect is because it would be very difficult for Democrat legislators to come up with that message, because there are so many factions within the Democrat Party, and a number of them would reject that premise. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, I wrote about extensively, and I mentioned it here before, Republicans are gullible, they're naive, they accept anything that their representatives tell them. No matter how false it is, they simply go along with it. And this is the danger for the United States of America, that we have a political party, both representative and constituent alike, who go along with whatever is said without taking a look at to see whether there is any logic to it. They just accept it. In fact, they justify it, they rationalize it, and they try to make it a message to convince the other side. That's why conversation with my fellow Republican about that supposedly tax cut that the Republican passed in 2017 went nowhere, because trying to explain to those individuals that it was no tax cut and giving them example of the legislation showing that it's not a tax cut, and yet they couldn't care less, which means when they lose the argument and realize that they're wrong, instead of realizing that their legislators are lying to them, now they fall into something else. I don't care. I prefer Republican. How do you explain or even have someone see they're in the wrong, they're in the dark, when the final aspect of their argument is, I don't care? Because they argue and argue and argue until they realize there is nowhere to argue because they lost the argument. I don't care. Which means those individuals fall into the category of those who will not change. Not that they don't see they're in the wrong, they just decide, I don't care. So the fight between Democrats and Republicans is not really a fight between Democrat and Republican. It is a big divide between those who want to do things that really benefit the country and those who simply do not care about that. As such, the Dodd-Frank reform and consumer protection was passed. Now, I don't have to explain to you the detail behind it. The name should tell you if you remove the Dodd-Frank part, because Dodd-Frank is because Dodd and Frank, two senators, got together and they passed a Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. You don't have to be a genius to realize that a Consumer Protection Act is something good. Consumer protection. You don't have to understand the whole aspect of the legislation. You don't have someone to have to tell you what that particular legislation would do for you. The very title of the legislation, Consumer Protection, and it was done in light of what just happened at the end of the Bush administration. Wall Street meltdown, people losing money, retirement account being wiped out. So the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection job, primary goal, protect the consumers from something like that to ever happen again. Now, is that Republican? Is that Democrat? Something that protects you from banks really just making a number on the consumers, financial institution charging you high interest rate, increasing fees for missing. By the way, that what I'm about to tell you is not a story. It happened to me. I paid a credit card and there was, I don't remember if it was even a full $1 that was left on that credit card, and that was due to the fact that some interest may have been calculated and added later after the amount of money that was owed on the credit card. Give you an example, $40.52. That's what was owed on the credit card. So you send a check for $40.52. That happened to me. So as far as I'm concerned, I paid off the credit card, except that, well, there was a 95 cents added to that credit card afterwards that I wasn't aware of, because I knew that I paid off the credit card. Until 2 months later, I received a bill that's telling me I owe $35, $36 or something to that effect. And I said, I didn't buy on that credit card. It must be a mistake. So the bank charged $35 on top of the 95 cents that was residual of an interest that was previously charged on that credit card. And then they add some more interest to it. So I get charged a $35 fee, a 95 cents that was not on the credit card at the time I paid it off, and plus they charge interest on top of all that money. That's the kind of financial predatory behavior that the Consumer Protection Act was protecting consumers from. That banks, financial institutions that simply see consumers as a piggy bank and just charge them anything and threaten to damage your credit if you don't pay it. Oh, I forgot. It was by Democrats. That's probably why it was bad. I honestly, I'm talking to you, sometimes it's baffling to try to understand what do Republican constituents really want. they prefer to be lied to. And if something is done that's favorable to them, if it's done by Democrat, it's bad. I don't want it. What's bad about being protected from predatory lenders, banks, financial institutions? What's bad about that? But if it's by a Democrat, it's bad. I don't want it. And that's what Dodd-Frank reform and consumer protection is. But lately, you may, and I'm fairly certain, lately you may start receiving from your credit card companies a lot of changes in terms. They call it, there is a change in terms in your account. I'm actually tired of receiving those. I guess partly my fault because I have gazillions credit card, and every time I turn around I receive one of those email, one of those statement that says we have the term of your account has changed. And the reason for that, if you pay attention, if you bother to read it, is telling you that now they can charge you again more fees. If you guess it's because the Trump administration, the Republican Party, has been rolling back the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, then you have to be a genius. Yes, you heard correctly. Since the Trump administration, the Republican Party has been working aggressively to remove all the protection, all the consumer protection. How is that for a party you like so much because they're fiscally conservative? Now, here's an act which protects the consumers from predatory action from your lenders, your bank, financial institution, credit card, mortgage company. That's what the act protects you from. Now your Republican take over and say, consumers don't need those protection. Let's remove them. And they have been doing exactly that. Now let me show you something that's quite interesting. Donald Trump, the consumer protection was officially founded in July of 2011. As I mentioned, after the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act was passed, it became necessary for the Obama administration to have an agency, a bureau that regulate the financial institution, because just passing an act and not having anyone to make certain that the financial institution goes by what the act says, then would be just a useless exercise. So as such, the CFPB was created, and its job is to monitor financial institutions. And during the Obama administration, a great job was done. Really, pretty good job was done, making sure that when you write to the Attorney General of your respective state and you tell them about something that happened, they take care of that pretty quickly. I personally have dealt with the Attorney General in the state of New York, and I see how quickly they respond to any kind of complaint about anything that is consumer related. So that's good for us, the citizen of the country. What difference does it make it was passed by Democrat? It protects everyone, not just Democrats. But for some reason, Republicans don't like it because, it was done by Democrat. So Donald Trump appointed uh, I believe a lady by Kathy Kraninger as the new director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, as you can see by what I just said, this is a pretty fairly new bureau, right? It was created in 2011. This is 2019. Just 8 years. It was created under the Obama administration. And the purpose, the main objective, the main goal is to protect the consumers from predatory lending, from financial institutions that use all kind of ways to squeeze the consumers out of every single penny. Working class, those people that are rejoicing of getting an extra $80 on their paycheck, those people should have been excited that there is an agency that protects them from those type of institutions. I want you to pay very close attention to what's on your screen. I want to guide your attention to the bottom part, left hand corner, and see what it says. It says that this site is updated on a quarterly basis, and the last time it was updated was June 4th, 2018. And you know what happened on June 4th, 2018? Donald Trump appointed Kathy Kraninger as the director of the Service Bureau. Everything you're currently looking at on the site, in terms of complaint handled, consumers address, those things were done under the Obama administration. Because nothing that currently being done under the Trump administration, under the Republican Party, is good for the consumer. So they do not even bother to update the site. What exactly do Republican constituents really want? Do they want government that do things that benefits them, or do they want a Republican Party that continue to erode all the fabric of our society? Because everything that's done for the good of the consumers, the Republican legislators undo them, and for one reason and one reason alone, in order to protect the institution, not the people. And guess why they're rolling back Dodd-Frank? That's the reason today you're receiving all those change of term in your credit card, is because now the credit card company can charge you more fees, can charge you more interest, because all those protections are being rolled off. Of course, you cannot update a site that says it's for consumer protection, because all those things that are being done today by the Republican Party are against the consumers. So you cannot update it. So they left on the site all the things that were done under Obama, and they don't bother to update it because it would not look good. What do Republicans really want? They're not just gullible. Because how could you continue to support an individual, to support a party that's doing everything detrimental to you? How could that be? Yes, you can call yourself fiscally conservative, but that doesn't mean that means what? If indeed your action prove just the opposite. this presentation was of some use to you. I apologize not to have had the opportunity to address or read part of the Mueller report. We will come back tomorrow and we will have a full presentation of reading of the Mueller report. If this presentation was of some use to you or not, you already know what to do. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion. Let us know how to do it better in the future. Because as I always say, this program is not going anywhere, so you might as well help to make it better. Should you have a particular topic you would like us to talk about, let us know. We will research it, we will debate it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Hope to see you again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Good day. That was an update through the prism of common sense. Join us again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. See you next time. The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.